are there for Sanskrit cause, and certainly I can tell that Mrs. Malati Outley is one of them. 10 times I had the good opportunity to be in that institute, Mahatma Gandhi Institute, and I know that they also love India and love Sanskrit and Indology so much, and that the department grew to be a big body now, School of Indological Studies, with at least 3 departments and so many people doing good research, good teaching, and the quality of the students also I liked very much, so sincere and so academically well informed. So with these words, I invite Acharya Malati Oakleji, and the few listeners will grow in number, I hope. So also them I welcome, and I thank Mr. Abhidat sir to be of great help to us in organizing these lectures during these corona-affected times everywhere in the world. So, madam, with these words, I welcome you. Kindly speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thank you very much for these kind words and praise towards me. I hope I stand up to the standard. I thank you also and the Vidat Parishad to have invited me to give a small, a small introduction, like an overview of how Sanskrit and Indology has inspired the Mauritian diaspora in Mauritius to keep to its roots and to keep the connection with India and Indian culture. So where is Mauritius and how is Mauritius? For the participants, I would like to just give a small review. But Mauritius is an island situated in the middle, I will say, of the Indian Ocean, in the middle of like a connection between the African continent and Australia, and this south to India. And it played a very good role in the early centuries, where foreign traders used to go around and for their stuffs to collect from India and Arabia and Mesopotamia and all this, and they used to just stop at here. They stopped to in this small island, very beautiful small island, not with no local inhabitants or Aborigines, I would say. But if they would stop here for refueling and for refueling for the journey to and through the countries in which they were trading. As such, Mauritius knew 3 rules. Like the first one of the Dutch people who had settled here, and they were happy here, but unfortunately they could not stand up because of the weather circumstances that were not favorable for their plantation, and also the crops were destroyed by monkeys and rats. And at that time also, there was a very unique bird found in the world called the dodo, which was here. And unfortunately, when after several bad weather consequences, the Dutch had to leave the country, and the French settled in. And after the French, it was the British who settled in. So 3 consecutive rulers who tried to stay here, but Dutch only was the one who retreated because he could not afford for losses in his trade. Now, the French and the British were also colonizers, and they had also other islands where they were using the slave labor. Slavery was there. They also were the one who were ruling over India. French ruled over India for some time, and British also ruled over India. So these people, they stopped here. French settled here for quite a long time, and the trade went on. The new movement between the countries, India instead stopping in Mauritius, went on. But since the French were settlers, they settled down here. They found it very good with the weather, and they were adapted themselves to the lifestyle here. They brought with them now African people to work. They were the slaves, African slaves. They were called Negro slaves, to work on the plantation fields. The French also they were settled in India as well. They brought from, like, very early in the 1715, they brought the people from South India to work as artisans and to work in the fields. At the same time, the British, after some time when they settled, they were also merchants, and they settled in India, and they found Mauritius a very right place, already developed quite a lot by the French. So they came here and they settled here, and there was this struggle going on between the two who will stay back here. The French, after the war, of the Gave War, and they lost the war in 1810, handed over the country to British. And under British, the factory, the plantations continued to flourish. Now there was a problem with the slaves. Mauritius had not its own inhabitants, depended upon brought in imported labor. So the French brought in labor from colonies which they had already settled in and ruling over, from the Mozambique, from other places like small countries in which were there under their rule. They brought in here, but unfortunately, what happened in 1833 when the abolition, the Slavery Act, abolished the slaves system, the slaves were released, and French found it difficult to continue the plantation works. So what they did, they brought people working to work in the fields from India. The French, when they handed over Mauritius to the British, to these slaves, they were left on their own. French, some of the French who stayed here kept their slaves to work with them for them as personal attendants, and the others were let loose. Some committed suicide, some left the country, some hid in the forest and tried to resist and died in that way of hunger, and they could not work. They were not around. Now, British adopted a system of bringing slaves, bringing people from India. This made the system of indentured labor, which developed afterwards. At the start, though there were people like they were convicts, they were political convicts and other convicts who were brought here in the 1830s, after 1810 afterward, when they took over the country. This led this scarcity of labor created by the abolition of slavery gave the opportunity to the British to bring Indians from India, from several states of India. It's not that they came from only one place, that the French had brought only from the south, but British brought from different places. Now these people, they were from different walks of life. They were not only laborers, but among them there were also literate person, skilled person, who not only who could also work not only in the fields, but could work as cook, tailors, cotton spinners, indigo manufacturers. In that way, cheap labor experience, it was the British could have cheap labor from India. Now, the British experience of Indians was great, because they had been they were nearly governing India, and they were very influenced, you can say, were very, very much inspired by the way the Indians worked, and they had created a good relationship with them, if I can say, for some time, and they were very satisfied with the dedication and the work that these people showed in the work that they were allotted to. For some time, the laborers were brought. They were when the sugarcane plantation started being fruitful, there were independent parties who acted as recruiting parties. So they recruited people from there under a contract called the indenture contract. So the indenture contract stipulated that the people employed under this contract, they were bound by the contract to work for a limited period of time. For example, for 2 years they could work, and they were free to leave, or they were repatriated. Now, between 1815 and 1820, Governor Farquhar brought Indian convicts, political prisoners from Bengal and Bombay under this contract. Among these new contracted workers were skilled ones who could be employed in another sector. Now, the articles of the contract were regulated the terms of employment and assured a general standard of living. The contract seemed good, except that they provided criminal punishment for breach of contract by the workers. So to redress this inhuman punishment, passed an ordinance. In Mauritius, an ordinance was passed, Article 10 of the Ordinance number 16 of 1835, to combat breaches of contract regarding the work output of the workers, like neglect work, refuse to attend work, or disobedience of rules set out by the owners. So instead of corporal punishment, the article of the ordinance sentenced the workers who had made the breach, sentenced them to work or to pay a fine or imprison with or without hard labor for a specified period not exceeding 6 months, and they had to make up the time lost in undergoing the punishment. It was a bit of lighter than the punishment, the criminal punishment that is they were left out without any source of living, and they died in that way. Now, this indentured contract, as it was, Girmitia system, as it was called later, it had to be stopped because there was a complaint that was launched to the British Parliament that these people were being ill-treated. But it took over again in 1842, where another group of immigrants landed in Mauritius, which make up they were the ancestors of the actual population of Mauritius. Now, the cases of behavior were still there, of misbehavior were there, but the British, being common rulers of both countries, they were acquainted with the Indian mindset. They were acquainted with the books and they were, the style and way of living of Indian indentured laborers. When these people were brought, the boats which came from ports of India like Calcutta and Mumbai, while they landed in Port Louis, that place now is called Apravasi Ghat, and the contingent, the people who landed over there, was a mixed ethnic group. They were from different parts of the country, some speaking Mumbai Hindi or the Maharashtrian. Others came from other states of Bihar, speaking different types of Bhojpuri. There were those who were speaking Tamil, Marathi, and Telugu. These people, they were distributed around the island. They could not give people the right to stay all together, too much all together, in fear of revolt or the disturbance that they might cause when they were living in a group. So people from one contingent of the ship, they were distributed around the island and placed in the several various sugar fields to work. Now, these people, when they nearly settled, some of them, after their contract ended, termination of the contract, they could choose either to stay or to go. Nearly only 1/3 of them chose to return back and were repatriated. 2/3 of them stayed in this country, in Mauritius, and they and their descendants have contributed a lot to make what Mauritius is today, and how they have kept the progress going on till now. They are still, if the ancestors, they are still a reference to the younger generation. Now, these people, when they came, just like when the black slaves were here, they came with their own culture, language. I already said you. They came with their own Indian culture, and British, being acquainted with their mindset, they did willingly or unwillingly allow them to practice their faith, practice their way of life, lived out these their dress, their dress, and even provided them with general living things so that they could live as if they were living in India. Right? It was not in that way as such, but these people, these immigrants, they settled down, and in little time that they got for themselves, they would practice their prayers, and they would practice. They would tell their folk tales, and in this way, many of the folk tales are still remembered now and still told. And then folk songs, folk dances, among which there is one which has been awarded the cultural heritage by UNESCO, is the Geet Gawai. It is also believed that these people, they brought with them, those who could bring among the little things that they brought with them from India, scriptures like Ramayana and Bhagavad Gita. Though they were literate, some of them were pandits, although the British did not like to bring Brahman as indentured labor, because according to their experience in India, they felt that Brahman was not made to work in the fields, and they would not work. They were lazy. They will not work in the fields. But some of the Brahmins, they changed their name, added Singh or the name to their own name, changed their name, and they could hear and they come here. So they were literate people. They thought of how that their children were doing nothing. So they thought of educating their children and educating even the elders. So in their leisure time, they would sing the Ramayana as it is being sung today, even today now with our children, because we are having them, and tell the folk tales, tell stories from the Ramayana, and also try to hiding observe fast and observe festivals. They could they knew Jyotish, and they could know when and how and to celebrate these festivals. So the camps where these people were living, they started like being a bit of created a habit of living here, and a bit familiar with the environment and what they were expected to do and how they were expected to live. So the small devascapes, that is small temple, very small things like a place of prayer in their own place where they were given, and morning and evening sandhya was performed by them, lighting the lamp and doing the puja. These people at that time, they had already they knew already prayers in their own vernacular and also in Sanskrit, like Tomeva Mata Chapita. These were common things. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu were common things. They all knew it. So that shows that they had a knowledge of Sanskrit with them, and Indology was already in them. They knew, they were acquainted with, and they didn't want to leave it. So they did not create any new thing, but they continued what they had brought with them from India. So Indian culture remained alive, although in lesser degree, upon the sugarcane camps where they were living. Now, how to preserve and what to do? Reading was some of them who were not literate didn't know how to read and write. It is believed that the pandits or whoever was literate, they helped them to learn. Now, the children were left on their own. Nobody was there to care for them during the time. Things were not so easy. Now, the miracle happened when Mahatma Gandhi visited Mauritius in 1901 on his way to and from South Africa to India. Now, South Africa also had its own diaspora, and Mahatma Gandhi was already acquainted with the lots of the Indian people in South Africa. He had undergone certain bad experiences, got bad experiences over here. When he came here, he found that even here also, not to that level, but they were not so happy. Now, he visited the country for the little time that he stayed in here. He was welcomed by the Indian people over here. a big welcome, you can say, party was given in by the Muslim traders who had already settled over here. And when he went back to India, thinking about the lot of the Indian people of the diaspora here, he sent Dr. Manilal Doctor in Mauritius. So these Indians who had come to Mauritius to replace the black slaves now had a leader, found a leader. They had no leader so far. They were just working on the sadars and the sugarcane field owners. So they had a leader in the person of Manilal Doctor. He was a lawyer. Now, some of the slaves who had stayed back were taken over by the French church. The French, when they settled here, they built churches, they built monasteries, and they brought with them priests. And there was this fright, this fear that they were converting the Indian people. But there were also some of them, like Adolphe de Plevitz and some other white people, who were fighting for the cause of the black liberated slaves, as they were called. Now, when the Manilal Doctor came here and he found that there were no organized society or party or political party to cater for or to look after the Indian population. So there was one party that was headed by the Adolphe de Plevitz group, which was called Parti Libéral, the Liberal Party. Manilal Doctor met with these people and found a way to be in and talked to them that they could also, while they were fighting for the cause of the descendants of the slaves who are now liberated, they could include also the faith and fight for the Indian. So we can say that in this, that was the first political party. Now the advice of Gandhiji and Manilal Doctor Ji, when they were living, they convinced the Indians who were here that they should now take active part in politics. They should also educate their children, and they should strive for better living conditions and for a better life for those to come. Now, just go back a little. The recruiting agents has given very high hopes to the recruited parties, to the Indians who were being recruited to come and work on the fields over here. That Mauritius was a very rich country, and they would become rich in very little time. Now, the dream, although it was shattered at that time, was not true in that, but being people who were very hard laborers, hard workers, these people tried to make their dream come true. So this first Liberal Party agreed to take over the cause of the Indian laborers as well. Then it inspired by Manilal Doctor, that first step was to educate the children of these indentured laborers, and even for them. They found out that the French were already running schools to educate these descendants of the black people. So from that time, that is between 1913 and 1923, societies were set up. Now, these societies, they developed from what was called bedcars. Bedcars mean when the indentured laborers were free, they would sit down on the veranda wherever they were living. They sat down there and discussed their own way of life, how to improve. They would also have discourses among themselves, sing and dance their folklore, that which they had brought with them, their traditional songs, their traditional dances. So these bedcars became the first, we can see, the schools where learning could be done, teaching could be done for the children and also for the elders. These bedcars were the foundation for societies that afterwards, can you give me a minute? several societies were created. The Pandit Atmaram, who wrote about these societies, said that there were around 63 such societies that were launched, that were set up to look after the welfare of the people with very specific aim and objective. The very first one, the very first structured Hindu association was founded on the 27th February 1925, and it was named the Hindu Mahasabha. So the aim was to look into the problems facing the Hindus at large during the colonial rule. Now, the school run by the French catered only for the Creole, the children of the liberated slaves, as they were called. Now, the Hindu Mahasabha, within the aim, I can just spell out some of the aims, was to look into the problems facing at large during the colonial rule. It was to provide children and grown-ups with a view to their physical, moral, intellectual, religious, and social advancement. To promote and propagate religion, social and cultural advancement of all Hindus, build temples, undertake management and maintenance of the temples, among others. So they approached the French, the French teachers who were there, that is the priests who were acting as French teachers. And some of the people, it was in Port Louis, that is the capital. Now, some of the traders who had originated from Tamil, their children also were going there on the condition that they were converted to Christianism. Now, the priests who were employed in that school, they knew the Tamil language, so the medium of teaching to these people was Tamil. Now, the other aim, which of the Hindu Mahasabha, was to build and maintain social auditorium halls, to erect building and community open libraries and maintain the libraries, to have time to debate, lecture on moral literacy, philosophical, religious, and historical subjects, and other activities related to it. So the Hindu Mahasabha, after some time, they built in the compound where they had acquired on lease by the government. They built the first school. It was the Hindu Mahasabha school. After some time, that school was handed over to Mr. Obigadu, who named it the Trinity College. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm speaking from home, so my doggies are here being not being good to me. Yes, so it was Mr. Obigadu. He became the manager of the college. Now the biggest problem was language. In which language to teach these students, to teach these people? The people of Indian origin, they were speaking their own dialects, and at that time Bhojpuri was common among them. They had learned, they could understand each other, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Gujarati, some very little of Sikh were there. So the problem came here, what to do and how to teach these people. Now the commission was set up where several proposals were made. The French were very clever. When they had left, they had enforced the British government to keep their language and culture alive. So the medium of teaching in that school was to be French. For Indian indentured laborers, French was very difficult. The proposal came as use French and English to teach the children of the Indian laborers. Commission was set up. The commission advised that instead of using French, why not use the language of the people as medium of teaching? Afterwards, the commission accepted. There was Maharaj Singh who had come here, who had proposed that you should the personal, that is the ethnical language could be used to teach, but the proceedings of that commission was not, never came, has never been available. Even nowadays we don't have, it's not available. The commission agreed upon that schools, the children will attend schools. Schools will be built in the vicinity of the estates where they were living, and medium of teaching would be their language, that is Bhojpuri. Bhojpuri was introduced as a medium of teaching to the students, student. Now that was on the academic or education system, that helped in a lot to the children of the indentured laborers to become educated, to aspire to higher education. In those days, it was only primary. Afterwards, the Royal College, when the Royal College were built and the children of high society attended, it was open to the children of laborers, of the indentured laborers. Several other protests came when these children of the Indian immigrants, they studied. There was the facility of moving to British, to Britain for further studies. But the thing was that the colonizers, even the British, they were not happy, and the French, the descendants of the French, they despised these people. They were given very bad names. So they did not accept the first teacher when he was recruited to teach at the Royal College. They made a sit-in, and that teacher, he opened another school in Rose Hill where secondary education was provided. Now, societies, this was the education, that is, we find that in the primary, under the primary commission and the primary schools, the Indian Oriental languages were taught. Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, they in the Betkas, they still continue to flourish. They were taught their own language and culture. They preserved everything, and to be able to deal with, to stand up against with the colonizers, the French and the British high class society, they started learning other languages and other cultures as well. So that was a plus point for the Indian diaspora in Mauritius, starting to move out or fly on its own wings. Indentured labor also was abolished. And the last one, I think 1943, the last one, it was abolished then. That was the last ship that arrived over here. But many other, there were also another group of Indian people who had come here. They had come as free passengers. And among these who had come as free passengers were people, just like nowadays, brain drain. They wanted to find better conditions of life, and they wanted also maybe to share their knowledge to the people who had settled over here. In that way, there was exchange of knowledge, and education thrived. After independence of Mauritius, we find now that education sector is open to everyone. There is no more indentured labor. There was a very bad name that were given by the French people to the Indian laborers. They were called coolies and Malabar. Now there were some of the Tamil people who had come from the Malabar hills, and this bad name given to them had to be had to be eradicated, had to be forgotten, had to be left away. It should not continue in that way. So the people who came afterwards, they came with the aim of giving a rise, a better push to the education to make the Indian diaspora people feel proud of themselves and proud of their culture, proud of their languages. Now, with really a bit of the education sector, let's go to the cultural one, which makes Indian diaspora of Mauritius one of the best among all the other diasporas. The other diasporas in the other countries, they were very much influenced by how these cultures have been preserved up to now as it is. Tourists, when they come over here, what catches the eyes of the tourists when they move around the island at this moment? The site of all world religion is found here. They can see all religions over here. They can see all cultures in one place. Religious buildings, diversity of language, dress, foodstuffs, food eating habits, entertainments, which they could find if only they could travel in the various countries. But then they found all here. Now, Western tourists have always been attracted by India. When they come to Mauritius, they find all the diversity of Indian culture in one place in Mauritius. Western tourists very much influenced by India. It's true, scholars were impressed by the Sanskrit books. Some Western scholars translated so many of the scriptures, but they were amazed to find same here, and hence the name Little India was given to it. Now, we could not at such a point when tourists started coming here over here, that bad names that were given to the descendants of the indentured laborers had to be erased. So there were movements, just as there were many movements like the Arya Samaj, Kabir Panthi, and other sects moving on in India, working for the betterment of the people, and also to inspire people to fight for independence from colonizers. Now, here, Mauritian Indians, we can call them now, they were in close contact with what was happening in India, and they were influenced by all the groups, the movements, independence movement, cultural movements, reform movements. So that people from those sectors, they came here as free passengers and helped the Mauritian people here, the Indo-Mauritian here settled here, to revise their way of living. So one descendant of such a person who was afterward a very important, very, very popular person, he is Vasudev Bisundayal. Pandit Vasudev Bisundayal, he was on the cultural side, and his brother was on the political side. He was able to move the Indians to reject this Kuli and Malbar tag that was upon them, and that was a great success to re-establish, fight against the challenge that in this very contemptuous title given to them could be forgotten. Now it's forgotten. Nowadays, if we refer to Malabar, no Hindu will be happy to hear about it. Now, on the cultural side, Bedkas are already keep living all rites, rituals, festivals, prayers, times of praise, not only within the Hindu community, but also with the Muslims. They also, in their own way, they professed their faith, they practiced their faith. Now, among the Indians, there were Tamils who had come in Mauritius, who had settled in Mauritius earlier. They had already brought artisans who had built at that time small kovils, where they would, like Mariamma temple, Golfori Amma temples, they already had there. Now, in Indian households now were recognized, were distinct from others, because now they had a Hanuman Gadi in their place. They called it the Hanuman Chotra, Mahabir Sami Chotra. In every Indian house, you will find the flag of Mahavir Swami. And every evening and morning, they would be doing their Sandhya, reading of Ramayana during specific festivals. Navratri, as they could do it, they professed it. The Gujaratis were very fond of the Navratri Puja. They were performing Navratri Puja. Another very common sight that were found was that on all the boundaries there was a chabutra with small idol type put their stones put there that represented Kali and goddess Kali Mandir. Now they are Kali Mandir, Kali place. They would call Kali Mai. It was found throughout in the middle of the sugarcane fields, and the prayers were performed regularly at that. Even the colonizers and even nowadays the sugarcane field holders, they perform the Kali Puja before they go for harvest. Small devils started to crop. These small Kali Mai, they quite lately they have been transformed into temples, and other Shiv temple, other temples for Ram or Krishna, all this. They small in small countries like in Gokula, the very oldest one is found there. In that way, cultural setting included and helped in maintaining the Sanskrit language, Bhojpuri and other dialects, and Hindi. Hindi was the language which was given most importance. It was considered to be more civilized in such a way, between inverted commas, to the dialects that were being spoken. So the Hindu Mahasabha's aim was being fulfilled by an offshoot of this Hindu Mahasabha, which was the Hindi Pracharane Sabha. Hindi Pracharane Sabha, after its incision, started the teaching and learning of Hindi language, and after some times conducted examinations in Hindi on behalf of Hindi Sahitya Sammelan Prayag, which is still on now, still going on, still providing system. Now, the good thing was that all the Hindi syllabus contained a module, I can say, a part, a paper in Sanskrit. This inspired the Hindu Mahasabha and afterwards the other religious societies that came up to train people who wanted to become Pandit. And the syllabus of Pandit, i.e. Karma Kand, Sanskrit was mandatory, was compulsory. So many small Baitkas started teaching the Hindi as offshoots of the Hindi Pracharane Sabha, and Hindi was given recognizance and was taught in the primary schools. So the idea of teaching the descendants of the Indian immigrants in their own language was now settled. You could teach them Hindi through Bhojpuri and English and other languages. And I must tell you that the descendants of the Indian indentured laborers, they were very good at English. They were not that much good in French, but not that much. They are good, but not that much as compared to their English. English was ruling, so it's too natural. Now, the Hindi Pracharane Sabha and Hindu Mahasabha were not the only one Sabha working for the welfare and betterment of Indian diaspora in Mauritius. Other societies also were founded by the other ethnics. They had their own way of their own language. They would like to preserve their own culture, their own faith, their own festivals. Now, they were there. Prayer has to be done. Pandits have been trained. The exchange of pandits from India also was a bit loosened, not tight as it was in the earlier stage when the British was ruling. They could come for some time. Swamijis could come from some time, stay here, and train the people, the pandits, to better their knowledge of the scriptures, so that they could be able to give lectures, discourses to fulfill the aims of the Hindu Mahasabha. After the incision, after the launching of the Arya Samaj in India, Arya Samaj also was launched in here, and Arya Samaj is still flourishing. And Arya Samaj also had nearly the same aim that Hindu Mahasabha has prescribed in his aims and objectives. They also offered learning and teaching, and Arya Sabha followed the principles and ideals of Swami Dayanand, and tried to put into practice also the term that it was that back to the Vedas. So if we have to go back to Ved, that is Sanskrit teaching is compulsory. On the side of the, now there were two parties now, the Sanatani and then the Arya Samajis. Sanatanis, they were a bit free to practice their culture, their dress, their eating, their way of life, their speaking. So many festivals started to become national festivals. Now they're already national, holidays are given, or national holiday is allocated to them. Now, the Pandits who had come here, who had settled here, there was one Pandit Sedimanlal who had come at first as a contractual labor, and afterward came on his own as a contractual worker. He had many skills, so he was working in development of the streets and in the south, and there he was very much attracted by at that time called the Paritalav and the false tales related to the Paritalav. After one or two visits at the Paritalav, he was inspired by, it is said, by divinity in there, and found that it resembled the place from where he hailed, that is, he hailed from some village of Orissa, and he decided to use that place, that the water of that lake, as Ganga Jal. He said after his contract the first time, he went back to India, and afterwards when he came as free passenger and to live here, he came as a Pandit and also as a trader. He brought Indian stuff from India, and here he would go around selling like hawkers. He would go around selling those things, and Indian people were very happy about it. And moving around, when his trade, I can say, flourished, he bought many of the properties of the French, bought and selling and buying of properties of the French. And finally, he got a very good plot in the north of India, in the north of Mauritius, in Triolet, where he made his abode. And that place, it was a land owned by the French Langlois, on which there was a mill. Now, the chimney, the mill, the portion of the mill that held the chimney, he converted that with the help of the Tamil artisans who had come to build the Tamil temple in Port Louis into what is now a jewel in the Indian Ocean. That was the first Hindu temple of that caliber in Mauritius. So he brought all the statues from India so many times that he went and come and went, and by that time he was very well known around Mauritius. He organized the pilgrimage, just as at that time, just as even nowadays in Sawan, the people in Ashwin, I think Indian people go to the Kanwariyas, they go. He introduced this Kanwariya here in Mauritius for Mahashivaratri. So when he first brought his Shivaling at the consecration, the first time Mahashivaratri was performed with the water from that lake, which is now known as the Ganga Talao, and perform the Shiv Abhishek there. Now, culturally, this Pandit has contributed a lot in preserving all the cultural aspects of India. At that time, now some of them have that, but when he passed away, well, some were forgotten. He organized Ramlila, he organized cultural shows, as it could be in the yard of that temple. He developed the temple he brought in several deities, and in Mauritius, until the ISKCON people came, there was the only temple where the Jagannath is there. Jagannath ji, that is the three murti, the three statues of Balram, his sister and his brother Krishna are there. And another Shivling he brought from another place. So now it has been removed. The people have removed it and they have developed other things. The Kali temple has been enlarged and development has been done. So this Pandit, he was literate. He knew he could sign his name. He could read. He introduced this pilgrimage on foot, walking from respective temples to Paritalav, to Gangatalav, to bring that water which would be used for Abhishek on Masik Shivratri or Shivratri. He organized Ramlila, which is no modern, even nowadays not in that way. And he also opened an ashram in which he gave shelter to widows of laborers who were left to themselves and could not turn. And the land besides the temple, he gave it. He donated it to those people who were poor. That was the first, we can say, ashram for widows and for orphan children. He gave them education, taught them, made them become pandits. Some of their descendants are still there. So that person contributed a lot. That is Pandit Sanjeevan Lalji. He contributed a lot. His descendant then took over, not the temple. The temple was given in donation with 2 or 3 of our lands to the trust which he made just before he died, how he passed away. His tomb is still there in the temple. Now we can see this. I have to go fast. Is just an overview. It is. So we skip so many things. Now this was the stepping stones that helped, inspired the later generation to keep their culture, to keep the Indian culture, and to keep them distinct from the others, but living together. By nature, Indian people, they are very passive, very tolerant, very helpful and sympathetic. The British knew that. That is why they preferred Indian laborers rather than from other places. Now, the temples grew. Paritalav, now called Ganga Talav, was developed further by the Hindu Mahasabha when he leased from the government on bail the land all around the temple. In that Maheshwarnath temple, there was the Baitka where Hindi was being taught and the Pandits were being trained. So this culture that the Hindu Mahasabha was, the aim of the Hindu Mahasabha was put into practice and continued. Nearing the time when Mauritius also started to fight for its own independence from Britain after that, after India got independence, influenced by that, and they started to eat. Many of the Hindu people, they went for studies in India. And other Pandits like Pandit Thakur Prasad Mishra, Pandit Jadunandan Sharma, Vasudev Vishnu Dayal, all these, many others, they went to India. Some got education in, for example, Vasudev Vishnu Dayal, Thakur Prasad Mishra, they studied from BHU, Sanskrit, Hindi, Karmakand. Pandit Jadunandan Sharma, he went to Gurukul system and stayed in several Gurukuls, mastered the Vedas, and when he left afterwards at large part of his education stay, he graduated from Dhyanan Anglo-Vedic school in Lahore. Now maybe it is in Pakistan. And on his testimonial, Vishwa Bandhu, the Acharya who there, he gave him the Ashirvad, and as Guru Dakshina, he requested him to propagate culture, Vedic knowledge and Sanskrit knowledge in Mauritius. He was the only one in Mauritius who could speak fluently as you do, sir. Those who are listening to me, as you do, as you speak. And I listen to you when you're speaking this Sanskrit. I'm really very sad that I can't speak in that way. I know I can read, I can understand, but I can't speak in that way. He was the only one who could speak Sanskrit fluently as you do, sir. He gave lectures. He trained many people in the Karmakand also. And he was the first one. Now, when Hindi and Sanskrit were being taught, festivals were being organized, celebrated. Pandits were officiating certain things, festivals and so on. The need for a library was there. The need for the original books occurred because so far the teachers who came in exchange came from India to teach these people. They brought their books. Some donated their books. They are still in the archives. They are found in the archives there in the MGI archive. They left, but other students now, all the Indian students, all the descendants of the Indian students were, or the boys for a certain time, they went to school. It was compulsory, it was mandatory. Education became mandatory and primary education was free for all of them. So books were necessary, books were primordial. And which was more important was the text, original text, not translated one, those in Sanskrit. So Pandit Jadunandan Sharma was the one who opened the first library. He was Pandit officiating Karmakandi, who was a scholar in Arya Samaj ways and in the Sanatani ways, both of them. He had graduated in all of them. And he opened the first book where all stuff, books, murti, whatever you want to, jhal, dolak, whatever it was, required for the revival and maintenance of the Hindu culture. He was the first one who set up the library. And that was in the Portly Central Market, stall 365. And that bookshop was operative, helping all the schools that were teaching required books. He also wrote songs, and he also wrote speeches for children, to make them acquainted with the language, becoming speaking language, fluency speaking language, until he passed away in 1967. Then after that, now during that time, only before 1967, other also libraries were set up, because for example, some of them they sold the film fair and other things related to, and news magazines and so on. But his library was educational library. It only catered for things related to Karmakand, Arya Samaji, or any other panth. Now, not only Arya Samaj and Hindu Mahasabha Samaj were the strongest one in those days. Arya Samaj split up into other branches as well, and even Hindu Mahasabha also, it did not break up, but it influenced others to set up their own societies. We have now the Kabir Panthis, we had the Jain, which did not last for long. The Kabir Panthis are still there. The Krishna Mandali, the Indo-Mauritian Krishna, but like more than 63 societies were there even during that time, and now even it has spread more to prevent conversion to other cultures. So the culture and education moved together. You need to be educated to be able to preserve your culture, to keep. You need to know Sanskrit to be able to perform, officiate pujas, havan, and so on. Now, the greatest good thing, if I say, gift, if I can say, was by the Arya Samaji, who brought Swamijis from India. And these Swamiji used to give lecture, and they were able to convince many people, I can say between inverted commas, to get converted to Arya Samajis. It was good in the sense that these people who get converted into Arya Samajis, because it was a movement, it was not a religion, it was the Hindu religion, it was Indian culture, it was Indian religion, but it was a movement. These people who adhered to this Arya Samaj, they were forced to perform havan every day, morning and evening. In that sense, when the tourists come now, when the tourist comes now in Mauritius, he finds that Vedic mantras are being chanted as he could hear it in their place, in its natural place in the Gurukuls, as we can see. These tourists, he can find temple, he can find kovil, cultural center, celebration Indian festivals as done in the mainland. The Mahashivratri festival being celebrated as it is called, the Kaveri for the Tamil, the Maharashtra Day, all these days. So the Diwali illuminates the whole island. In that way, the tourist is very much attracted. It is maybe the local people, what the local people may not so much give attention to because they are living it, is the foreigners who come that find out how the Indian diaspora in Mauritius is somewhat different from the others. One reason is that the Indian number, the Indian population were more at that time, more than 75%, more than 50%, more than 75% were there. So they could form, they were able to bring, to keep and preserve and propagate what they had brought with them. We must not forget that they propagated, they preserved the culture that they brought with them. Afterwards, that initial, I can say, if we can say in that way, primitive, we can say, golden primitive culture that they preserved was developed through coming developments by other generations still there. After independence, there was more that to enhance, there were more opportunities to enhance the development of Indian culture. With an act passed, the Mahatma Gandhi Institute was set up under Indian politicians now. Mauritian, Indo-Mauritian, let us call them. The advice given by Mahatma Gandhi and nurtured by the Manilal doctor, that is
Om. ओम. गुरुः तेषां सम्पर्कः विच्छिन्नः.
किञ्चित् बाधा स्यात् तत्र क्षणभरम् अपेक्षताम्.
ओम.
हरि ओम.
हरि ओम.
बाधा अस्ति किञ्चित्.
बाधा अस्ति.
आमामाम्.
तदैव प्रतीयते. किञ्चित् अपेक्षा क्रियताम्.
आमामाम्.
अपेक्षा क्रियताम्. इदानीं तत्र अहं वदामि।
अहं प्रतीक्षां करोमि।
प्रतीक्षा क्रियताम्। डॉक्टर कमल दवी वर्तते, तस्य स्वागतं कुर्मः। श्री विश्वानंद पट्टिया तस्यापि स्वागतं कुर्मः। डॉक्टर राजेंद्र कमल दवी। हेलो
गुरवः इदानीं न सन्ति दवी महोदयः।
न सन्ति, अस्तु।
मध्ये आगताः।
आचार्यः आवां
अच्छा, के वदन्ति?
कमलः।
अस्तु, अत्र नाम नास्ति मन्ये। आम्,
विक्रम।
अस्तु अस्तु, विश्वानंद महोदयन।
वेरी हैप्पी टू सी यू। बहुत दिनों के बाद दिख रहे हैं।
कौन बोल रहे हैं?
कमल और विश्वानंद दोनों साथ में ऑफिस में।
Yes, I am so happy.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. सब ठीक सर?
Please one speak to us on philosophy and Indian Philosophy Association.
The association,
Dr. Kamal. Mostly I remember you.
One person now, it's only me, and I have.
Yeah.
No.
Today I was.
So how are you, sir?
Yeah. Hello. Yes, very fine. Very fine.
Very good to see you, sir.
So both of you are doing very fine.
We are happy to participate in this hosting.
After so much of time, actually, we can have some teleconferencing. Actually,
Yes.
When Kamal knew this, I did not know this. Now I can do it.
Yes, sir. So we can talk sometime.
Yes.
I see you very active. I see you very active online, sir.
No. Certain things I'm doing, I have to do it.
So how are you? Everything fine?
Okay. And daughters, everyone is fine. Brinda is fine.
Everybody fine,
I'm
sir.
so happy. This morning I was remembering of my emails to you. Everywhere I am writing home, away from home.
Yes.
So I liked Mauritius so much.
Definitely.
It's a great country, actually. And Vishwanda came twice.
Come again, sir. Come again.
So Kamal also should come.
Yes.
Kamal is BJP symbol.
I guess I remember in 2011 I visited Kurukshetra.
Yeah. And yes, you came, of course, you came. But academically, you have to come.
But we have to come again.
And I'm very
We have
happy
to come
that
again and again.
in your DP there is
Kurukshetra
Shankaracharya.
is such a nice place.
In your DP there is Shankaracharya. I felt very happy.
Yes.
That there is someone.
That's my other identity, you know.
Yeah. So it was such a great place. Actually, Vishwanda also invited me.
Benji Malji intervened and she spoke on Indology in Mauritius.
Sanskrit and Indology.
And she has been speaking on how Hinduism and Indian philosophy has flourished in Mauritius. And you have come and you have visited, you have seen how Hinduism and philosophy is alive here.
Yeah.
And she has done a very good, I think she has given a very good overview of how philosophy has come to Mauritius and how it is been. And she has been a very important, her father also has been a very important person.
इसको ठीक कर देगा, प्रदीप जी को बुलाइए. जी. Yes.
सुनाई दे रहा है सर?
ओम.
रविदत्त जी, नमस्ते रविदत्त जी.
नमस्कार महोदय. नमस्कार जी महोदय. ठीक है.
नमस्कार रविदत्त जी.
सब ठीक है?
नमस्कार महोदय. नमस्कार. जी कुशल जी सब.
गुरुजी अभी ऑनलाइन नहीं है?
हाँ जी.
गुरुजी ऑनलाइन नहीं है अभी?
नहीं वो ऑनलाइन है लेकिन अभी उनका मोबाइल म्यूट दिखा रहा है।
किसी अन्य कॉल में है।
हाँ
और आप कैसे?
जी जी सब कुशल जी, आप लोगों का आशीर्वाद है, सब बढ़िया है जी।
बढ़िया।
अभी
मैं जी मालती जी, बहुत अच्छा लगा आपको सुनकर। It was very interesting.
आई डोंट नो, आप पता
सुन
नहीं
रही हैं?
कनेक्शन कट गया, पावर कट हो गया, बिजली चली गई थी तो इंटरनेट कट हो गया।
आपके यहाँ?
हाँ
आपके यहाँ? हाँ
हमारे यहाँ घर पर हूँ ना।
हाँ यही ऑफिस में है अभी।
हाँ
Yes.
एप्लीकेशन है यहाँ पर।
Madam, please complete.
कनेक्शन भी है।
हेलो।
मैम प्रणाम।
ये क्या हुआ देखना। वीडियो कैसे आएगा?
समाधान था।
Not connecting.
आपकी आवाज सुनाई दे रही है?
नहीं तो उधर से नहीं हो पा रहा है ना।
उधर से नहीं हो पा रहा
ना।
सर इंडिया के बीच लाइन कट गई।
प्रोफेसर
नहीं,
जी
और मेरा ही प्रॉब्लम है, मैं ये सब टेक्निकल थिंग्स नहीं जानती हूँ ना।
ना ये तो
कनेक्टिविटी है।
इट्स वेरी इजी।
भारत में वो लोग बहुत डेटा यूज करते हैं।
हाँ डेटा
डेटा में कनेक्टिविटी उतना ठीक नहीं।
दूर रहकर भी
Live, supposed to be live on YouTube also.
Yes, we are live on YouTube right now. अभी लाइव है, चल रहा है YouTube पर।
लेकिन अनम्यूट नहीं हो रहा है ना, अब हो रहा है शायद।
नहीं, क्योंकि जूम है ना, वो कंट्रोल उसके पास है।
होस्ट के पास। या
हाँ तो उसको जोड़ना,
उसको अनम्यूट करना चाहिए। हाँ रविदत्त जी
यू आर अनम्यूटेड।
बोला अनम्यूटेड है, सुनाई पड़ा है?
जी सुनाई पड़ रहा है जी।
ओ आई एम सॉरी, यहाँ पर प्रॉब्लम हो गई कुछ।
ना इट्स ओके।
वैसे भी खत्म होने वाला है। तो
कांग्रेचुलेशंस बहन जी।
हाँ जी,
हमें आज सुबह पता चला, अन्यथा और ऑफिस हमारे थे या पूरा नहीं फॉलो कर पाए। और हमने जब वो देखा 12 बजे तो हमने सोचा 12 बजे ही शुरू होगा, तो ये इंडियन टाइम।
12 बजे इंडियन टाइम।
हाँ इंडियन टाइम। तो कमल ने मुझसे कहा कि यस इट्स इंडियन टाइम, तो 1-1.5 घंटे पहले वो शुरू हो गया। अच्छा था गुड। मैं जैसे ही आया तो आपको सुना मैंने। वेरी गुड।
पता नहीं ये लोग हेलो
जी आपकी ध्वनि स्पष्ट आ रही है मैम जी।
सुनाई पड़ा है तो राउंड अप करें थोड़ा
जी। अभी आप जी
conclude. I was speaking about the different societies that had been set up to preserve this Indian culture and to propagate it. Now, one of them was the first one, if I can say, with mutual understanding between India and Mauritius after our independence, 1968. In between, just to pop in between, is 1947 and 1968. In between also, after India got independence from the British, the cordial relationship between the people of India and people of Mauritius was very close, very cordial. And for that reason, it was very easy, it was very helpful, much help was received from Indian government for the settling of other cultural centers, other cultural things. We also were donated also to us things like musical instruments and free service of lectures of Swamijis who came here regularly to boost up the spirit of the Indians who were here, who had to face the challenge of conversion, which is still on, unfortunately, the challenge of conversion. In those days, it was the conversion towards Christianity. So when the Indian people on both levels of spirituality and academic and education, spiritual education, philosophy, and so on, they thrived. They started thriving. Political parties stood up, but the main political party was that of Sir Sagar Ram Ghulam. And some of the people, some of the Indians who were working on the field, who were still living on the fields, but they had become proprietor of the land now. They had bought land from they worked enough to be able to buy land from the proprietors. And these people, like they were the Sribahan, they were Ritu family, Gajadhar family. These people, when they become influential people, and they were able to train, to bring along with them the descendants, let's still say descendants of the Indian indentured laborers, and they became good politicians. They had a very sincere aim to liberate the Indian people, the descendants of the Indian laborers, and make them also become free people, like the Indian people, like other people of the countries. They were not yet so much attracted towards the West, but it was only Indian culture, every system of India that inspired them to keep Mauritius as it would have been if the people living here were living in India. We were better off, maybe, according to some. We were less off according to others. They could not see, they could not digest how in the Mauritian descendants of the Indian of the so poor Indians could have thrived to such a. But there were also many others who supported them. And among the supporters, we can give credit to some little of the British people, more from the French descendants. They helped in the education system very much. They accepted, taught. We got very good French scholars among the Indian diaspora. Not only good English people, but good French scholars also were there, flourished there. And in their setting up of parties, they had a great hand. There were independent candidates, let's say, in the first election, who, for example, Mr. Gajadhar, who was elected in the Flak district over there. And from there was also Mr. afterwards known as Sipaw. He was Sri Prasad Srivahan. This person, he was a bit of let's say, among others, more active in social work, more active in education. He was not a politician, he was a social worker, but he was maybe among the nominees, Indian nominees in the Legislative Assembly at the time when the Labour Party already was formed, and the political party, the Labour Party, was very active and fighting for recognition. So this person, who was already a nominee in the Assembly of British Assembly under King George, he was well, I have to say it is like this. He was from the Brahmin caste, and even like today, Brahmin category, people, they are less in number. They are less in number, a very, very minority. Now, the others who had acquired much skill and labor and had their own property, their own plantation, they became small planters. They were the Vaishya Jatis. The Kshatriyas were there, the Vaishya Jati, more of them. They were the largest population. So Shivsagar's party, they worked on this caste distinction, and they convinced Mr. Sipaw Sadhya Bukan to step down from that nominee place in the assembly and allow Dr. Sir Shivsagar Ramgulam to enter there. It was in the 1939, between 35 and 1940s, because that person at the age of 40 lost his life in an accident while attending the political meeting at Le Réduit, the place of the governor. So we can see that the dream, if I can say so, of Manilal Doctor and Mahatma Gandhi and of our ancestors had come true. We had our own leaders. Indian diaspora had its own leader, its own political leader, its own religious leader, its own temple, its own way of teaching. By that time, when Sir Shivsagar Ramgulam took over, his group, his team, then they fought for the further academic development of the Indian laborers. The subjects being taught in the secondary schools were more on the Christian side. And it was difficult for the Indian laborer, one, to adapt to the medium, next, to learn Latin, next, to acquire Bible knowledge, which was a compulsory subject at that time. Even during my time, it was compulsory. I had to take Bible knowledge because Hindi was not taught in the secondary schools. So these were the pioneers who established the teaching of Hindi as an examinable subject in primary school and introduced it to the secondary level. And the descendants, the followers, the others have now established it on the tertiary level as well. Hindi was not taught only in bed caste. On the contrary, bed caste lost their importance because it was given to all now, mandatory for all. And the parents in those days, they really wanted their children to know other languages, but Hindi first. Bhojpuri was the spoken language of older people. That was their own language. They are the intimate language, house language, market language, whatever you can call. Even the market people who were the people in the trade shops and so on who were not of Indian origin, they had learned Bhojpuri. Bhojpuri was very popular. All people spoke, all the diaspora people, the Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, and everyone, they all spoke Bhojpuri. And you may recall, people of my age, they will recall that we had Hindi teachers among Tamil-speaking people. Right? Quite lately, we had Guruji Ragan and so on. They were from the Tamil-speaking people. The Telugu people, they were learning Hindi. Afterwards, all the different various languages being taught. So the Mahatma Gandhi Institute was set up, mutual agreement between the two governments, two free governments. They were free to take their own decisions. And it was also for the benefit of India, just as now it is. It's finished with the MGI. So MGI was there as the center, which would take care of the preservation, propagation of Indian culture as it is, not mixed up. We cannot say Mauritian Indian culture, as we say Mauritian Hindi. It's not like this. It had to be Hindi, not Mauritian Hindi, not British Hindi, not Creole Hindi, nothing Hindi. And Dr. Sir Shiv Sagar Ramgulam was the Prime Minister. According to an agreement made with Sipao Sadsya when he stepped down, the agreement was that it was not written agreement, it was among themselves. People of those days kept their promise. So Shiv Sagar Ramgulam and his party, Harold Walter and whoever was there, they had promised that educated, qualified, and appropriate Brahmin people would be appointed in posts that were suitable for them. And afterwards, just as it is now, everybody is against the Brahmin, and we better not speak about this. But at that point, when Shiv Sagar Ramgulam take over the rule from the British, he became the Prime Minister of Mauritius. He saw to it that his promise given to late Sipao Sadsya was kept. The institutions, Mahatma Gandhi Institute, other institutions, wherever he posted such people, they strived. They made much progress because it was at the start. They had to make much effort to make it. And on the academic side, the Brahmins, they are more apt to do these things rather than going and working in the fields. They were very lazy to work in the fields. They didn't want to work in the fields. So that was what they did. Fortunately now, this caste distinction has been nearly cleared. There is no more that much. Only between very orthodox families it's still being observed. So institution, Mahatma Gandhi Institution, was on a contract that appropriate people, suitable lecturers, suitable people that were very dedicated people were sent by the Indian government to start all the courses at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute. There was also an African department there where people from there had come to help in building and enforcing and empowering the Mahatma Gandhi Institute. There was at a time, I'm not remembering the name, quite Pandey, I think, who was able to put up the Department of Sanskrit and Hindu Theology. I think if I'm not forgetting, Sanskrit, Department of Sanskrit and Hindu Theology was set up, and the learning, teaching and learning of Hindi, of Sanskrit was done alongside with other Indian languages. Hopefully, for the best of the Indian diaspora, Sanskrit is still being taught at tertiary level, and now even at post-tertiary, that is post-degree level, PhD and post-doctoral level. That is it. So the journey was maybe hard, struggle was there, but that Indian mindset has not left the descendants, our ancestors from the Indian diaspora. That is why among all the diasporas around the world, the Mauritian diaspora is considered to be the good one that from whom you can take example and do on. Because we have we can say Hindu government, but we have Hindu in many posts, in very high posts as prime minister, minister, in all the places, and they are doing well. They are keeping, we can say, in some way, according to their efforts, according to their capacities, helping in keeping the Indian culture. As I said, Hindi as Hindi as it is, no Mauritian, no Creole Hindi, it is Hindi. Now we have challenges, these challenges of Christianization and conversion into others, and the imposition of other natural native languages upon us, which is not more a native language. We won't speak about that, but it still hangs upon our heads. Those who are left now and who are going to give it to to legate it to our next generation, hanging as the sword of Damocles upon our heads, that if we are not vigilant now as parents to still inspire our children, our heirs, to keep to and to think that Indian culture, Indian is best among all the cultures. Everybody knows that. I'm not exaggerating. It's best. Western, anyone in the world will agree that the last and the oldest and the most preserved and the best culture is the Indian culture, which I would like to say on an ending note, that I think in the national, it was something I noted it down. Just give me a minute to find it out. When the question of language was discussed, the medium of teaching language was being discussed, with French. I can't have it in my mind. I'm sorry, it's a very good quotation I had noted. I can't find it now in all the papers. Well, it can be for some other time. Well, there is a French one, Ilgen, who at that time when the question of medium of teaching was being discussed, he said that this is a culture and this is a language that will never die. I just remember the last part of it, and it will always be there. Whatever they will try to do, it will always be there. And I feel that on an ending note, we can say that culture in all its form, karmakan in all its forms, has been preserved as it is. The Mahashivratri festival is public holiday, and the whole Mauritius echoes with Har Har Mahadev. Mauritius has its own Ganga Talao. Politicians may have brought down Ganga Jal from India to reconsecrate it, but it's still there. The original water of the lake, as conceived by Pandit Sanjeevan Lal, is the water of the Ganga, is part of the water of Ganga. This Pandit Sanjeevan Lal also, apart from preserving certain folk things, he also introduced Ganga Snan to be held on the beaches around Mauritius. And his argument was that Mauritius being in the Indian Ocean, nearly at the center, if you find it in the map, it's just there in the middle, south of India, all the rivers, including Ganga, they all give their waters into the Indian Ocean. And that water comes around and fills Mauritius with that Gangaism, if I can say. And he said that if we do not have Ganga in Mauritius, and we are not allowed to bathe, to take dip into the Ganga Talao, because it is its Talao, the water is not running fast, so we can't have a take bath in that. So all the sea around Mauritius is representative of Ganga. And he started where he was living. He was living in Triole there, and the Trobish beach is there. So he inspired all the Mauritians to go to the beaches and celebrate their Ganga. Nowadays, also Ganga Snan is celebrated on beaches, but people go first to pray Ganga and then to other beaches to celebrate this festival. All prayers are being made. So during this festival, these two main festivals, that this Mahashivratri and this Ganga Snan, it purifies the whole island, because Har Har Gange and Har Har Mahadev echoes throughout the island, throughout. Radio, on the media, people, phone, microphones, handphone, all everywhere, you will hear this going on. This Har Har Gange and Har Har Mahadev. The other thing also is, another good festival also is Diwali. Diwali also here is a public holiday. It's a national festival. You like or you don't like, but Diwali is liked by many others. You like or you don't like, whole of Mauritius is bright. As it was said there in the Ramayana, that when Ram returned from the forest to Ayodhya, Ayodhya was shining, not like Amavasya, but as if the full moon was there. So is Mauritius. So this is the Mauritian diaspora. This is the major aspect of Indian diaspora, in the Mauritian Indian diaspora, in the Mauritius type. Unique in itself, and I pray it is everlasting in that way. And I also pray, and I also make the wish that we get the collaboration of the Indian government as it is. See, just refer to the GUPU, now UCI, or whatever it is called, that idea of the then government to bring together people of the Indian origin, not as people of other country, because our descendant, we are born in Mauritius, we are Mauritians, but we are still Indians. We are called overseas citizens of India. We are called as non-resident Indians, because this drain of looking or in search of work, Indians are all over, Mauritians are all over the world. But still, our little Mauritius, when Indira Gandhi ji came and she said that this is Chota Bharat, is not false. So I will end on this. I thank you for your attention. Hope that I was able to convince you that Mauritian Indian diaspora is the best among others. Thank you. Hari Om. Mishra sir, thank you.
And particularly when Dr. Kamal is there, Vishwananda is there, your
Yes.
good self is there, my good hosts are there. So when you people took me around, and I was mentally circumambulating the whole of Mauritius to different places, to Ganga Talab, and the place where that Hindu Mahasabha is there, center. You perhaps taught there also for some time.
Yes.
And perhaps Mrs. Raghuvar was also doing teaching there sometime.
Yes.
So I remember all of you and feel so happy that in 1969, when actually Indira Gandhi went there and put up that board there in Sanskrit, when I came back first time, I had to deliver a lecture on Mauritius and Sanskrit in my department. So I had got down that in Sanskrit those lines. And I told them that you see how in Sanskrit that the inscription is there. And in 69 that happened when the Indian Studies Complex came into happening to the courtesy of Indian Culture Ministry also.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing that India also lives outside India.
Yes.
And first it extends up to Australia. It extends up to Taiwan. And the Indian Ocean is the only ocean and that has bears a name of a country, Indian Ocean. So that's why, as with great favor for that belongingness, Madam told that Chota Bharat.
Yes.
Chota Bharat. So, and little India, miniature India, and such miniature Indias are all over. And perhaps the whole of the world that is perhaps not remembering this, and this culture that went everywhere, this language that went everywhere, this society and this science and this everything that went everywhere. And in pre-Islamic literature in Arabia, they told that before some 3,000 years, there's all India, there's Hindu everywhere, and those 4 books, they spell out everything on earth and heaven. Anything you want to know, if you do the 4 books, then you are omniscient.
Yeah.
And that is what made Darasiko rethink on his own religion and came to do the Upanishads. So we are very thankful to you. And since Dr. Kamal is here and Mr. Vishwananda is here, I'd also like that they will have sometime their own lecture in these 3 series that we are doing. We are doing 54 lectures. And perhaps today's was 24th or 25th. And many more lectures are there in the 3 organizations. We are having 18 lectures in each of the organizations. And actually, she has been taught also in India, in Delhi University. And I'm so happy that some Indian at heart, being a Mauritian politically and nationally, is speaking to us how culture has shaped and how this conversion is not good in any respect all over the world. And this conversion has changed the face of the world. What happened to our original inhabitants? The aborigines, maybe in Australia, maybe in America, in any country. Once somebody came and he had a PPT of 35 countries, a man from Jaipur, Rajasthan, was telling this conversion, what wrong it did to the whole of the world.
Yes.
And so perhaps not this. This converts a very ugly picture in Goa, what we find in Kashmir, what we find in Kerala, what we find. So these are the things that humanity should be about. Let us not force anybody. We should get people who are world renowned. They also are into this business of conversion, very ugly, dark business. So this should be stopped by the UNO also, and everyone should take care of this. Of any religion. Sometime we were converted, say centuries back, years back. Now let us not convert anybody. Every religion is good, and perhaps there is no other culture like India, as you told us. And this Einstein also knew this. All great souls of the world knew this, that they belong to India somewhere in their heart. So I'm so very thankful to you. Then I pass on to Mr. Ravidatta Sharma, who is of great help to us in these app connections. I am not very good at it. I am not tech savvy that way. My daughter sometimes helps me, but now in my office. So Ravidatta will carry forward the things. So and also he will propose the vote of thanks. Ravidatta, please.
ओम धन्याः वयं महोदयानाम् आशीर्वचोभिः अद्य अनुभवामः कथं प्रवासी भारतीयानां विषये संस्कृतं पुनश्च प्राच्यविद्याः तत्र संवर्धन्ते। तर्हि इदानीं महोदयायाः हार्दं धन्यवादवचांसि अहं व्याहरामि। पुनः अत्र ये समुपस्थिताः सर्वेपि श्रोतारः तेपि धन्यवादार्हाः। तान् प्रति अपि अहं कारतज्ञं प्रकटयामि। तर्हि इदानीं गुरवः कल्याणमन्त्रेण समापयितुं शक्नुमः वा? ओम्। अत्र सरिता महोदय अस्ति, डॉक्टर विक्रम शर्मा, तनु शर्मा, पुनः तेषां सर्वेषामपि वयं हार्दान् धन्यवादान् व्याहरामः। पुनश्च श्रीमती मालती औकले महोदया,
धन्यवादाः।
तासामपि हार्दाः धन्यवादाः प्रणमामः वयं।
प्रणमामः।
पुनः कल्याणमन्त्रेण इदानीं समापयामः। ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ओम शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ओम नमो गुरुभ्यः। ओम सर्वेभ्यः
थैंक यू। नमः सर्वेभ्यः। ओम
नमांसि।
नमः।